The year is 2025, a world reeling from cyber terrorism, a military powered by autonomous drones, and a shadow war fueled by betrayal and the ghosts of the past. For countless gamers, Call of Duty Black Ops 2 represents the last truly legendary title from a golden era of first-person shooters. Back in 2012, its tagline was bold. It was taking the series from the pages of history into a speculative future. Not just any future, but the year 2025. Well, here we are. The future is now. So, I decided to blow the dust off this classic and see what the developers at Treyarch actually got right about our world. From the tech and weapons of a new robotic age of warfare, to the culture, politics, and the global state of affairs. You'll be shocked by how much of their vision became our reality. The story of Black Ops 2 kicks off with a new Cold War brewing between the world's capitalist superpowers. The catalyst? A devastating cyber attack that cripples the Chinese economy, which they immediately blame on the United States. While you might have forgotten that initial plot point, the core of the conflict revolves around a rare earth element called Solarium, the key to unlocking breakthroughs in quantum computing. This Solarium device is later used by the villain, Raul Menendez, to hijack the entire US drone fleet and turn America's greatest strength into its biggest nightmare. Before your eyes glaze over at the tech talk, here's the simple version. Quantum computers use the bizarre rules of quantum mechanics to solve problems light years faster than the computer or phone you're watching this on. The game's idea that this tech poses a massive threat to data encryption, privacy, and global security isn't just sci-fi nonsense. It's a very real concern for experts today. In fact, right now, stocks are soaring as companies race to dominate the quantum computing space. Interestingly, the game completely missed the two biggest tech topics of our time, AI and cryptocurrency. Both were in development back in 2012, so they could have been included. The biggest difference, however, is an economic one. In our 2025, you're far more likely to see tech billionaires trying to profit from quantum computing than a cyber terrorist using it for a doomsday plot. Still, for a game from 2012, centering a global conflict around data security and hacking in a cyber Cold War, that's a remarkably solid prediction to start with. Predicting future politics in science fiction is a minefield, and Black Ops 2 has its fair share of hits and misses. For example, the game's 2025 still shows an American-backed government in Afghanistan, which we now know didn't last. However, its focus on China's monopoly on key tech components creating global economic tension is something Treyarch emphatically absolutely nailed. The world's current reliance on Chinese manufacturing for things like transistors is a massive point of political and economic friction. The game also correctly predicted the rising importance of private military contractors. It introduces the SDC, or Strategic Defense Coalition, a massive alliance of Asian nations that stands against the United States. This feels eerily similar to the real-life Ukraine Defense Contact Group, an alliance of over 50 nations formed to oppose the Russian invasion. Speaking of Russia, this is where the game's predictions feel completely off. Besides a passing mention, Russia plays no role in the game's global politics. As one of the world's largest energy exporters, it's bizarre that they're just sitting on the sidelines. The game seems to assume clean energy has solved all our problems, which is, unfortunately, a very poor prediction. The game also predicted a female US president by 2025, a common belief in media from the 2010s that has yet to happen. But perhaps the most incredible fumble was the inclusion of Secretary of Defense David Petraeus. In 2012, Petraeus was the director of the CIA and a consulate for the game. He appears throughout the campaign, advising the president. In a wild twist of fate, just 3 days before the game's release, Petraeus resigned from the CIA after an FBI investigation revealed he was having an extramarital affair and had mishandled classified information. Seeing him in the game now is an extremely unfortunate and kind of hilarious casting choice. Let's get one thing straight. There are way too many VTOLs, or vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, in Black Ops 2. While these futuristic jets look cool, there's a simple reason we don't see them buzzing around our cities. We do have VTOLs, like the V-22 Osprey, but they use propellers, not jet engines. Why? Because the whole point of a VTOL is to land almost anywhere without a runway. Try landing a jet in a grassy field or on a rooftop, and you'll vaporize everything underneath it. It's just not practical. The game also gets civilian life right and wrong in fascinating ways. It correctly predicts the massive gap between the rich and poor. You see the stark contrast between the luxurious floating city of Colossus and the impoverished streets of other nations. But in our 2025, the super rich aren't building floating cities. They're just buying private islands and building luxury bunkers. Floating cities are a logistical nightmare for sanitation, supplies, and maintenance. One thing Black Ops 2 absolutely nailed was the idea of invasive, personalized advertising. Citizens on Colossus are surrounded by it, but the game imagined this would happen on giant billboards and jumbotrons. The reality is far more subtle and sinister. Advertising isn't on a big screen in the mall. It's in your pocket, on your phone, listening to your conversations and tracking your every click. The game's vision of tech also has that very distinct 2010s Iron Man aesthetic. Lots of clear glass displays and holographic circles, which looks incredibly dated compared to the minimalist designs of actual 2020s technology. Most of the tech we use today started in either the film industry or the military. Black Ops 2 explored some fascinating military concepts. Heads-up displays, or HUDs, are everywhere in the game, giving soldiers real-time info. In reality, the US military is desperately trying to make this work with its IVAS program, but the technology is still too clunky for widespread use on the ground. The game also features a millimeter wave scanner that lets you see through walls. While devices like the XAVER-1000 exist and claim to do this, they have to be placed directly against the wall and are nowhere near as effective as the game's reflex sight. But what about the guns? For the most part, the arsenal is quite grounded, with most weapons being based on real-life prototypes or existing firearms. The strangest thing is the complete lack of M4 or AK pattern rifles, the two most common weapon platforms on the planet. Instead, the game gets creative with speculative concept weapons. The legendary XM8, for example, was a real rifle that came very close to replacing the M16. The game imagines a future where it was adopted, naming it the M8A1. The real showstopper is the Storm PSR, a sniper rifle that can charge up to shoot through solid cover. This is based on a real, wild technology called Metal Storm, where rounds are stacked in a barrel and fired electronically. While the technology could theoretically exist, no one has actually built a rifle like this. In reality, the future weapons programs of the past 40 years were all scrapped. The new rifle for the US military is the SIG Sauer XM7, a weapon that no game or movie ever saw coming. Drones are the heart of Black Ops 2's story, gameplay, and themes, and they are absolutely central to modern warfare in the real 2020s. So, how accurate was the game's depiction? First, what they got right. The game correctly predicted the use of drones on a massive scale. From huge high-altitude bombers to tiny surveillance drones, the game's most iconic drone, the quad-rotor Dragonfire, is very much in line with modern drones used to support ground assaults. And, in a horrifyingly accurate prediction, the Hunter-Killer drone is essentially a real-world loitering munition, a small flying bomb that can circle a target before attacking. These are becoming more and more common on today's battlefields. But that's where the accuracy starts to crumble. Almost every drone in the game is fully autonomous, with self-driving and offensive capabilities. This is still not the case in real life, due to massive ethical and technical hurdles. The game's drones also act as direct combat units, equipped with machine guns. This is incredibly rare in reality for a simple reason. Guns and ammo are heavy, and drones are much more effective as flying explosives or surveillance platforms.
The biggest mistake, however, is how clean and universal drone warfare is in the game. It presents a world where every army has perfectly manufactured drone fleets. The reality of the 2020s is far messier. Drone warfare is often defined by civilian, hobbled-together devices born from desperation. Furthermore, the game's world has no anti-drone technology. Why are soldiers shooting drones with rifles instead of using jammers or microwave weapons? Black Ops 2 falls into a classic sci-fi trap. It imagined the cool new technology, but failed to imagine how the world would react and counter it. In 1903, a New York Times article predicted it would take humanity between 1 and 10 million years to create a working flying machine. Just 2 months later, the Wright brothers made their first successful flight. Accurately predicting the future is nearly impossible. Black Ops 2 gets a lot wrong about the tech of 2025, but the one thing it predicted with chilling accuracy wasn't a gadget or a gun. It was the central theme, that the conflicts of the future are born from the unresolved wounds of the past. It's a story about how our own human mistakes, greed, and thirst for revenge will always be our greatest enemy, no matter how advanced our technology becomes. The game isn't a perfect prophecy. It's a video game, designed to be bombastic, creative, and above all, fun. It never takes itself too seriously, and that's why it remains a classic. I don't know what the rest of 2025 holds, and in many ways I hope it looks nothing like the world of Black Ops 2, but I'm sure glad I got to revisit it one last time.